Duane Bratt is a political science professor at Mount Royal University in Calgary. He joins me now. Professor Bratt, thanks for taking time to speak with me today. First of all, I appreciate it. What is the latest on Jason Kenney's efforts to keep his job?
So there was an emergency caucus meeting yesterday in Calgary. The Alberta government has offices in Calgary as well as the legislature in Edmonton. There was a non-confidence motion that was put on the floor, but there was a big debate about whether it should be by secret ballot, and in the end it got pulled because Premier Kenney agreed to expedite a leadership review. Okay. When I initially heard that there would be a leadership review amongst the entire UCP party, not just the caucus, they have an AGM scheduled for this November. And so that's when I thought it would be. But now it sounds like it'll be at the 2022 AGM, but they're moving that from the fall to the spring. So sometime in March, there will be a leadership review of Jason Kenney amongst the entire party.
Yeah. So what do you think is the reason that the revolt fizzled? I mean, you talked about, was it this whole issue of an open vote in caucus? Is that where everybody went, wait a minute?
Part of it. I think never underestimate the political infighting skills of Jason Kenney. It's what he does best. And without being in the caucus room, without because there's confidence within the caucus, confidentiality. I think he told them that he was selected as leader by the party, not by the MLAs, and therefore that should go to the grassroots to determine the fate. I think he also said, given the factions within the party there's a part of it that believes he broke his promise by bringing in a vaccine mandate and a vaccine passport after promising that he would never do so. But there's another faction that believes that the government acted way too late, acted a month at least too late, and that has led to a spike in hospitalizations and in deaths. We now have over 1,000 COVID patients in hospital. ICUs are at capacity, and yesterday 20 people died of COVID, and the day before it was 29 people. Yeah. So there's this faction within the party, and I think Kenney was trying to make the case that whoever comes in as a new leader, if there is a new leader, is going to be stuck with that. So let's give Kenney time to get through it and then bring in someone else. At least that's what I think some of the arguments.
Like, do you think, so are we at a point where the Premier's fate sometime down the road here is a given, that it's just a question of time? Or will Jason Kenney fight it all the way? And could he come through this?
Well, this is the interesting argument. There's going to be those who believe, all right, we boxed Kenney in. We've got a timetable of when he will leave. But Jason Kenney, I think, is, as I said, a skilled backroom politician. And this gives him 6 months to get ready for a leadership review. And let's see how that works out. In the hopes that by March that the fourth wave has receded and things turn around for him. So it's a delaying tactic. I would not expect, I think Kenney will continue to fight, and this was a fighting move. I mean, he learned from Stephen Harper. Stephen Harper prorogued Parliament in 2008 because he was on the verge of a non-confidence vote. And while that prorogation occurred, the coalition collapsed under its own weight. So I think Kenney thinks that the opposition to him will collapse given enough time. Okay. The problem with all of this is nobody is thinking about the health and well-being of Albertans, right? This is all about little gamesmanship within the party as opposed to dealing with a pandemic that is raging.
Okay, talk to me about that, because it strikes me as a little bit curious. So we've had a pandemic now for a long time in this country, and I guess why, does it speak to the leadership of Jason Kenney if this far into the pandemic, there are still factions deciding how the government should respond to a crisis?
There's been unique features about how Alberta has responded to COVID, right? So back in June, the government announced that they were going to be open for summer. July 1st, they opened everything up. They dropped almost every restriction. They had the Calgary Stampede, and Jason Kenney was on record going around the province saying, we're open for summer, open forever. They were fundraising off of that. They were selling open for summer hats. And it was seen as now, in retrospect, premature. They knew by late July that the data didn't match their optimism.
Right.
And certainly by mid-August, we started to see the spikes. Alberta's been hurt worse by the fourth wave than the other three waves. And as I said, the death numbers are higher than the third wave. They're higher than the first wave. They're not quite at the second wave level yet, but we're now relying on other provinces to take intensive care patients.
Okay.
We're now relying on other provinces to send us doctors and nurses. They've had to postpone elective surgeries to dedicate resources to COVID. They had to reduce the surgery capacity at the Children's Hospital to deal with COVID.
Yeah. Let me ask you about, you touched on it. Jason Kenney asked the federal government for help, or his government did, one of his ministers, to airlift COVID patients out of Alberta to hospitals in other provinces. You touched on that, but that request came Tuesday right after the results of the federal election were in and the election was over. That timing's generated a lot of controversy for the Premier. How come?
Because it was clear that he was trying to stay out of the federal election to support Erin O'Toole's campaign, that Jason Kenney had been seen now as a liability in conservative circles, both in Alberta and outside of Alberta. So he waits till the day after the federal election to request federal help with COVID and to replace his health minister. We also switched out Tyler Shando for Jason Copping in the health ministry, also on the Tuesday. And we're also hearing that, well, the Premier spoke last Wednesday when he brought in a vaccine mandate, vaccine passport, without calling it that. It's a very complicated program to get away from calling it a passport, that he was actually supposed to wait until Tuesday to do that as well, except the health situation was just so dire, they couldn't wait. This shows that the partisan political games are the number one priority of the Kenney government, not the fact that people are dying in the province.
All right, got about 30 seconds left. Alberta has a COVID crisis and a political crisis. You've talked about all in one. The decisions being made by the Kenney government have put the province in the position it's in. How confident are you that it's this government, the Kenney government, that can get the province out of the crisis?
I have no confidence. I think he has completely lost the confidence of Albertans. There was an internal UCP poll that put his approval rating at 9%. That's single digits. But the UCP caucus just, in a sense, gave him confidence yesterday. So it's like the UCP party seems to have confidence, but the Alberta people do not. And that is not going to go well for the UCP party.
All right, Duane Bratt, thanks for your time today, Professor. Good to talk to you again, and take care.
Okay, thanks, Peter.